90% of the SME businesses on the market today will not sell. That's a national trend that's been going on, for a long time now. And there's many reasons for that. A number of the reasons are when the companies were started by the current owners, selling it wasn't part of the plan. Possibly it was the intention was a family legacy business. The kids would grow up and take over the business. Then of course the kids grow up and they're not interested in it. So it's almost a second thought. The other part of that is the owners are generally looking to land a windfall at the end. So there's an unrealistic expectation on the value and the expected sale price then of the business. And once they go through the process, they realise that the value and their expectations on price just isn't there in the marketplace. So there are multiple reasons, but the reality is that 90% of the businesses will not sell. What can happen in terms of unrealistic valuations or expectations? Could be a broker is touting for business. They're phoning businesses up out the blue, saying, "Would you like a free valuation of your company?" Yeah, okay, I hadn't really thought about selling the business. So then they start the process going. They'll give you a valuation based on a general information that you provide them with. And of course, we're all, it's our business. We've spent our life building this business, so we're given a real positive story on that. The brokers are driven by numbers. They're driven by listings. They have to get, if they're only going to sell 10% or less than 10% of businesses being listed, it's a numbers game for them. So they're phoning up, they're touting for business, they're giving you a valuation based on general information that you've given them, and what they're doing is they're saying, yes, we reckon we can get X amount for you based on the information that you've given or provided. So once you get into the nit grit and due diligence of it all, in terms of multiples of EBITDA, valuation of assets and all of that stuff, there is generally a different realistic figure attached to that. So the brokers have got a large part to play in it, but of course they're being influenced by the seller, because it's been their whole life building this business. Generally, there's a considerable difference in a valuation between a broker's valuation and a real market valuation of a business. And if I take the broker's role in all of this, the broker will generally take the seller's information at face value. And their role in the process is to maximise and fluff up and flower and present that company in the best possible light, and will not go into the real detail behind, normally, the real detail behind the finances of the business. As a buyer, they will go into the details of that through the due diligence process and get to the real numbers. They will scratch underneath the surface and get right into the numbers, which the broker doesn't do. And at the end of that process, there's normally quite a significant difference between what a broker has valued the company at and what the real market value is of the business. Okay, well, let's start with EBITDA. EBITDA is the most commonly known way of valuing a business. So it'll be a multiple of the EBITDA. Earnings before interest, tax, depreciation and amortization. So that's the general method of valuing a company. But to get to an EBITDA level is the profits, less expenses, and then you add back in tax, depreciation and amortization. But a number of the small businesses, the owners of the business, instead of taking a salary out of the business, for example, will generally take out dividends because it was the most tax efficient way of taking the proceeds out of the company for both the company and for the individual. So as a broker will value a business based on EBITDA, but not ask the question, is the director's remuneration included in that? So what they'll say is, let's say there is a £100,000 director salary, for example, that has to come out that comes out as dividends. They will, when they're calculating the EBITDA number, they are falsely calculating it because they haven't taken in the full amount for actually running the expenses for running that company. So the director taking a salary by way of dividend of 100,000, makes the difference in the EBITDA number of £100,000. So that as a multiple can be a considerable sum of money. So if it's 3 times multiple, it can make a £300,000 difference in a company, for example. So the broker won't go into that detail, but a buyer will. So between the broker's valuation and the real market valuation, therein lies the difference. So a typical broker, their job for the seller is to get them as much money as they can. So their advice generally is pretty loose, and it's normally how to beef up the hog. So beef up the hog as in, reduce your expenses if you can, that will help in terms of the value, try and, drive revenue, get a better EBITDA level at the bottom. So that creates behaviour within the company that maybe wasn't there before, and all in order to try and, like I say, beef up the hog. However, any credible buyer will see through that, and during the process of due diligence will get to the real market value. So whilst it's good and it's, and it makes the business look better, actual fact is that any credible buyer will see through that and will generally look at what the business has done over the last 2 or 3 years as opposed to the last 1 year since it's been marketed by the broker. A broker wouldn't usually disclose during the initial conversations with the seller on how a payment schedule would normally work with a buyer. Normally what would happen is there's an agreed amount paid on day one of the transfer going through, then there's staged payments, and that could be payments just agreed staged payments over a period of time, or over contingent based on performance of the company. But it's highly unusual that a buyer would come along and just give you the full amount of cash on day one to allow you to ride off in the sunset, and the buyer takes all the risks. So it would be unusual for a broker to disclose that or discuss that with a seller at the start. My advice to people looking to sell their business, their companies, would be to appoint an experienced firm of legal advisors, whether that's legal advisors and accountancy advisors, to assist you with the process. Firms that have quite vast experience in dealing with sales and acquisitions. Generally what happens is most small, medium-sized businesses use the same lawyers that they've used forever, that help them buy the business, that helps them run the business just now. But these people are not experienced. Therefore, in my experience, there's a disconnect, and these guys are really struggle when it comes to the actual transaction. They're aware of it, they'll help you, but they have no experience in it themselves, which actually generates more risk and fear in the whole transaction. So absolutely what we do, absolutely appoint an experienced firms of advisors to assist us. So we prefer to deal directly with sellers of the companies rather than going through the brokers. And the reason for that is normally the sellers that we're dealing with directly are motivated to sell the business as opposed to being approached by a brokerage to sell their business. So a motivated seller could be, someone's at the age of retirement, there's no family coming through that was interested in taking over the business, someone that's take the business they believe as far as they can, they don't have the resources to take it to the next level, the next stage, or they have an opportunity where the business itself, where they can take some money off the table and still remain part of the business for the foreseeable, whether it's a short, medium or long term. So there's a number of reasons why sellers are motivated to sell, but the sooner we can get into dialogue with these sellers directly, the better. But a motivated seller, there's many reasons why people are interested in selling their businesses. So our criteria is, first of all, our preference is to deal with motivated sellers. So we're looking to deal with motivated sellers that and where we can identify strong management team, strong management process with a proven track record of financial growth. We're not looking for distressed type businesses at all. We're looking for strong businesses that can prove the market and prove that they've been successful in the industry that they're in. So that's absolutely our criteria. We look for initially at least 3 years worth of audited accounts where available. And that then will generate, if it ticks the boxes for us, then we're engaged fully, and we then we get right into the detail after that. So if you're considering selling your business, my advice would be, where you can, go directly to buyers rather than going through a brokerage. That would be my advice to do it. You have to be realistic in your expectations on price and the value for the business. The motivation, you need to be clear. Do you want to continue the business? Do you want to stay in the business? What's the end for you as the seller? Appoint credible, experienced advisors to assist in the process. They're costly, but they're worth it, certainly in the short term anyway, and the long term possibly. So my advice would be, don't cut corners where you can, and be realistic in terms of the value for your business.